Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive deep into the fantastic Shadow the Hedgehog amigurumi pattern from Lumel Studio. We're going to break down what makes this an intermediate project, and more importantly, uncover those key professional techniques that'll make your creations look absolutely top-notch.
Okay, first off, just take a second to look at this finished piece. It looks incredible, right? Super detailed, maybe even a little bit intimidating. But I'm going to let you in on a secret. The techniques you need to get this polished, professional look are actually way simpler than you think. It's all about mastering a few key fundamentals.
So, here's our game plan. We'll start with the bedrock skills, the pro-level foundations. Then we'll move on to building the main body parts, tackling those iconic quills, and mastering the art of assembly. And finally, we'll add those fierce finishing details that really bring Shadow to life.
First things first, let's talk foundational stitches. Getting these right is what really separates the good amigurumi from the stuff that looks like it came straight from a high-end boutique.
So let's start with the magic ring, or MR. Honestly, this is pretty much non-negotiable for pro-level work. It lets you create this adjustable loop so that when you pull the yarn tail, that starting hole just cinches completely shut. This is how you get those perfectly smooth, seamless starting points on the head, the body, the limbs, no gaps, no bumps, just a flawless beginning.
And next up is its best friend, the invisible decrease. The pattern specifically calls this out, and for a really good reason. Instead of yarning through 2 full stitches like you normally might, you only work into the front loops. What this does is it pulls the stitches together so cleanly that it doesn't leave behind that little bump or gap a standard decrease does. The result, an incredibly smooth, clean fabric.
So, okay, we know what they are, but why are these 2 techniques so darn important? Why does a pro pattern like this practically insist on them?
Well, the whole point of amigurumi, the whole aesthetic, is based on creating this really dense, solid fabric. Think about it, you're basically sculpting with yarn. You don't want the stuffing, the guts, peeking through. These 2 stitches, they are your absolute best tools for getting that perfect, flawless surface.
Now, what if you're using these stitches and you still see little holes? You're running into the single most common issue, tension. The pattern gives you 2 really simple fixes. First, just try consciously pulling your yarn a little tighter with each stitch. If that's not quite doing it, go down a hook size. That recommended 3.5mm hook, it's just a guideline. Everyone's tension is a little different. A great pro tip is to just whip up a tiny test sphere before you start the real thing. It's the perfect way to dial in your hook and tension.
Okay, with our foundational skills locked in, let's actually apply them and start building the core components. We're talking the head and ears.
Now, this quote from the pattern is absolutely critical. You might feel like you should be gentle with the stuffing, but don't. You need to stuff this thing firmly. That firm stuffing is what provides the structural integrity. A loosely stuffed head, especially one that has to support all those heavy quills, is just going to sag and look flat over time. You want it to feel dense and really solid to the touch.
And check out the clever little detail for shaping the ears. The pattern has you crochet a simple flat piece, but to get that signature alert look, you don't just sew it on flat. Like the note says, you give the base a little fold, a tiny pinch, right before you stitch it on. It's such a simple move, but it creates a beautiful, natural curve and adds so much character.
All right, let's get to the main event, the quills. Come on, these are what define the character. And the pattern uses 2 really distinct crochet techniques to create all the different shapes that we need.
This is where the design gets so smart. For the quill on top and the smaller ones on the back, you work in continuous rounds, which naturally creates a 3D cone shape. But for those 6 large, sweeping side quills, the pattern totally switches it up and has you work in back and forth rows. This creates a flat, curved piece, and that's the key to getting his signature look.
So how do you get from that flat piece to a proper quill? It's really simple. Once you've crocheted the piece, you just fold it in half long ways. Then you use a yarn needle to seam up that long curved edge. But, and this is important, you leave the bottom edge totally open. This creates the perfect flat base for sewing it securely onto the head later.
And now, for the most crucial and often the most feared stage, assembly. This is where all your separate pieces finally become a character, and believe me, careful placement is everything.
If you take only one piece of advice from me today, please let it be this. Do not sew a single stitch until you have pinned every single piece in place. I mean it. Pin the muzzle, the ears, every last quill. Then step back, look at it from all angles. The pattern's tip to take a photo is genius.
Your phone's camera will spot asymmetries your eyes might miss. This one step will save you from so much potential frustration.
Make sure you use the photos from the pattern as your guide for placing those 6 big quills. See how they frame the face from the front, but then look at the back view. They create this awesome fanned-out sweeping shape. You're not just attaching them in a boring straight line, you're creating a really dynamic arc that flows back from the ears.
Okay, let's talk about the dreaded wobbly head. It's a super common problem, especially with a head this heavy from all the quills. The pattern solution is all about reinforcement. Don't just do one quick pass around the neck. You need to stitch around the entire join at least twice. And here's the real pro tip. Every so often, pass your needle straight down through the neck and deep into the body's stuffing, then back up. This literally anchors the head to the body's core and is the best way to prevent that sad droop over time.
We are in the home stretch. The construction is done, everything's secure, and now it's time for the final flourish. Those small embroidered details that are going to inject all of his personality and attitude.
The whole face really comes down to just 3 simple embroidery steps. First, you've got the iconic red eyebrows. Second, that little red detail right next to the safety eyes. And finally, that subtle little smirk with black yarn just below the nose. When you break it down like that, it feels so much less intimidating, right?
But pay super close attention to how much work those eyebrows are doing. I mean, look at them. That sharp inward slanting angle is everything. It's what transforms his expression from just neutral to totally fierce. The pattern's suggestion to maybe practice the angle on a piece of paper first is fantastic advice. Really, take your time with this part, because this tiny detail defines the character's entire attitude.
And there you have it. From those foundational stitches to the final assembly, those are the key techniques for a truly professional finish. By focusing on your tension, stuffing firmly, placing pieces with precision, and reinforcing those joints, you can totally elevate any amigurumi project you tackle. So, with these secrets unlocked, the only question left is, what character are you going to bring to life next?